Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. Hi, long time no see. I am trying my best to not apologize. So, I have been feeling like shit, to be completely honest. So that's where I've been. I have not been sitting still. However, I have been trying to protect myself from devices. And I think that the Vestibular Disorders Association conference that was last week, it's called Life Rebalanced Live. And for all of us that have vestibular disorders, it is a very challenging week. And some of the folks that were attending were like, how are you people not collapsing, like not just bottoming out? And the answer was, I was bottoming out. And but that week is so incredibly important to me that I'm willing to spend a week after recovering because I get to talk to people that struggle with the same symptoms as me, and that is unusual. It's unusual that we get to all talk to each other and compare notes and just say, yeah, I have that too. And I have a headache every day. I wake up and I live life despite my incredibly nauseating and painful symptoms. And the reason why I do is because I know I'm not the only one. And that's why we're here, right? That's why I do this podcast, because I don't want people to feel like they're the only one. And there's a lot of things I talk about on this podcast. Some of you are new, and I met you at the vestibular conference. That's the big word. It's a big word. But here I talk about more than my vestibular disability. What I talk about is the program that has helped me live better despite my disability. And that program came from Alcoholics Anonymous because I am next month 10 years sober. So this program is incredibly meaningful to me. I'm passionate about it. And I feel very much that one of the like slogans that we say in my sobriety program is to apply these principles in all of our affairs. Well, it just so happened that I had a stroke when I was 5 years sober, and lo and behold, practicing these principles in all of my affairs meant in stroke recovery. And in turn, 2 years later, I was able to name these symptoms that I was having from my stroke. And those symptoms are vestibular disorder. So for those of you who have recently joined me, there's a lot of you. So welcome. I'm super excited to have you. I really am. I would be even more enthusiastic if my head didn't hurt. But some days hurt more than others. What my symptoms look like for those of you who have a vestibular disorder and are joining me, mine are like triple PD. And sometimes if things get really bad, they look like BPPV, which is that classic vertigo. The way that I explain it to people, what I have is an intolerance for visual movement. So anything that moves in my environment and then moving my eyes. And I think the biggest challenge that I have dealt with in everything is being able to talk without moving my eyes around. And I still do it. Oops. Sorry. My dog just My dog just jumped off the bed and it sounded like, oh, you know what? She knocked the end table, and on the end table is this big, tall, skinny cylinder that has all of my sobriety chips in it, and it clanged. I thought something broke. Sorry, that's what happens here. We don't go back and edit unless it's really embarrassing, whatever I whatever I said and I want to edit it out. But most of all, if I cry, I don't edit it out. If my pooches get bothersome, I don't edit it out. My point is to just come here and be completely honest and be myself. And I want you to feel like we're sitting on the couch together and talking. So, I won't be I will try not to be distracted by my dog who is now digging on the bed, trying to get herself comfortable. You know how cats do it, where they like massage the pillow with their paws? Well, she has to pull up the blanket with her mouth and then kind of dig and move the wrinkles around and stuff. So that's what she's doing. She has now settled down. Her name is Autumn, for those of you who don't know her. Well, you know what? I'm going to move the camera. So I apologize for vestibular disorder people. I'm going to slowly move the camera over so you can see there she is. There's Autumn. Hi, Autumn. And then on the floor over here is Boris. That's our bulldog. And Autumn is a Weimaraner. Okay, we're moving the camera back around. It makes me as sick as you, so I don't typically move the camera around. I apologize for that, but you have to see um, my little angels here. Okay. So, what I wanted to talk about today is something that I promised one of my vestibular besties in the conference last week, but I didn't get a chance to record this topic because I had just been feeling so incredibly bad. Know that when I disappear for a few days, it's because I'm not feeling well. But I will be back. I always come back. So here we are. I have so many topics to talk about with you. I can't wait. But today, what I want to focus on, how do you know when, when to stop going to all of these millions of appointments and taking all of these medications that aren't working, and to just like settle in and accept that this is the way that my life is going to be. So, um, this is such a hard question, and I'm going to share with you my experience. So, in the vestibular disorders conference, I gave a short answer, but it's so um when I think back to when I was going to multiple neurologists, I was going to different kinds of eye doctors, I was going to also, for my stroke, I was going to a neuropsychiatrist to find out, like, cognitively what was affected by my stroke. Like, I was going to multiple doctor's appointments a month, from what I recall. There was at least one a week, plus vestibular therapy, and I tried vision therapy twice. So, really quick, I just want to give like a little bit of background, but I know there's a lot of you who already know this, but I just want to catch up people who are new to the podcast. First of all, no, second of all, no, first of all, but repeated, welcome. Okay. So I had my stroke. I'm really summarizing really quick. I had my stroke in 2020, June of 2021. I went back to work for 2 years. I went on short-term disability, decided that no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. My stroke didn't change my life. Everything's fine. And I went back to work. and with this headache, the same headache that I have today. And I just kept acting like everything was normal. I went to doctors, and doctors were telling me everything is normal. There was no test that was showing anything was wrong with me, other than I went to a neuropsychiatrist, and that test showed that I that I scored on the dementia scale, but not to the point where they say I have dementia. Those of you who have taken the test know what I'm talking about, I think. And then in addition to that, I have language and memory deficits. So sometimes when I'm talking, I forget what I'm saying. Okay, yeah, I know we all have that. This is on steroids. It happens every time I'm talking. Every time I open my mouth, I am working really, really hard to remember what I just said so that I can say my next thing. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to talk. But I've been practicing for almost 4 years now. We are in season 4, but my seasons are a little off with the years. So it's been almost 4 years that I've been since, wait, let's see. Yeah, since I've been doing the podcast. That's incredible. Um, so I've been really practicing this. When I first started the podcast, this short story is becoming a long story, sorry. When I first started the podcast, I had to have the script in front of me because I couldn't remember one word to the next. Um, Today I have an outline in front of me. So if I start straggling, because I am kind of a shiny coin type of gal, I have an outline that'll bring me back. So I went back to work for 2 years. My headache became debilitating sharp pains, and they were associated with my eyes. That I could tell. I could tell that things that moved, patterns, and different scenarios bothered my head more than others. So this I know, but that's kind of all I understood. When I went to all of these neurologists and eye doctors, vision therapy, I was going to say vestibular therapy, but that's when I actually felt understood. So, vision therapy, eye doctors, they were like, there's nothing wrong with your vision system. Everything's fine. And I'm like, there's definitely something wrong because I can't drive. I can't do anything. I can't watch TV. I can't scroll on my phone. I actually learned how to use voiceover on my digital devices, which is what blind and low vision people use to use their devices. So, um, today I've gotten to the point after so long, I can actually look at my computer now. It does trigger my symptoms, but I manage it. I figure out how much is too much and that kind of thing. So how did I get to the point? So now we're back on the topic. Sorry. I'm not going to apologize. So, uh, how did I get to the point where I was like, this is it. I can't keep doing this. Like, when do the appointments become the illness? When no doctor wants to say, this is it. This is all we can do for you. Um, they don't say that. What they tend to say is, my experience, here's another medication. Let's try this, let's try Botox. Let's try, you name it. I tried all different kinds of medications. Nothing worked. I did not try Botox, okay? Botox, when the headache neurologist in Georgetown Hospital said, let's try Botox, after I had already taken I think 4 or 5 different pills, not all at the same time, but taking one and then weaning off of that, and then taking another and then weaning off of that. Nothing did anything. Um, I had finally gotten, so you have to take at least 4 different kinds of pills before they'll prescribe Emgality, which is an injection. I take the injection once a month. This is the only thing that has been able to take the sharp pains away. And it's probably about 85% that the sharp pains are away. Sometimes, even today, I was outside and I don't know, the light hit the wrong way. I moved my eye to a little too far, something all at the same time. And I had it feels like a bolt of lightning that just shoots into my head. It's terrible. So I still have it happen, but Emgality is the thing that helps me the most. See, it just happened just then. Okay. So when I got to this headache neurologist and they said, let's try Botox. When I left, because this is what I tend to do, and you might be able to relate, when I leave the doctor's office or I'm sitting there and I'm getting ready to walk out, I'm like, okay, whatever you say, doctor, you're the expert, right? And then I go home and I sleep on it and I think about it. And then that emotional undertow starts to like kind of pull me under a little bit, where it's like, I can't keep doing this. If I say no to the Botox, what does that mean? Does that mean that um, I guess number one, the insurance. Does the disability insurance or medical insurance, what do they say if I opt out of Botox? And for me, my opinion only, I did not want to inject this poison into me to make my head not feel the headaches. Because what I wanted was to find out why I was having the headaches. Obviously, I didn't want to just keep putting things in my body that were going to make the headaches go away when I'm like, the headaches are there for a reason. Like, what is going on in there? So I had this mix of like fear, fear of saying no, guilt for thinking that I had an option, and yet relief thinking that there's another thing. There's another thing that might help me. Um, so after a couple, I think it took a couple weeks for I was actually booked to get Botox, which would have meant I would have had to get a ride into Georgetown once a week. It might once a week or once every other week. I don't remember how it worked for Botox. And um because riding in the car triggers my head to a terrible point, I thought, well, what's the point of me going in for Botox to relieve a headache that is being triggered by the ride in for Botox? And this is the same thing that I was facing when I went to vision therapy. Every time I, because I needed a ride, every time I went in for vision therapy, by the time I got there, my head was triggered so much that I couldn't do the therapy. So what I had to do was go sit in a dark room and stare at this green light. I think it was green. I'm pretty sure it was green. Um, I know it's weird, but I was supposed to stare at this light. And so after about 15 minutes of staring at this light, my head felt better. I didn't enjoy staring at the light. It was kind of like a light, it was like a light box and it had like a filter, a green filter over it. And it wasn't a bright green light. It was just this dim green light. And So my head felt better, but I felt that it was because I was just sitting in a dark room, and that allowed my symptoms to subside. Side note, the first time that I went to vision therapy and I sat down with the vision therapist and they put me in for it was like being in kindergarten and we just played games. And I sat in front of this first game and she poured out all of these like little blocks, these colored blocks onto the table. And she wanted me to organize the blocks. And I broke down crying. I broke down crying because it wasn't easy. Like it was torture. I'm trying to tell you this because I want you to understand the magnitude of going to the therapy and what it took for me to get there and then play these games and try to improve my my problem when honestly they didn't know what my problem was. So I got to this point of just, I felt very lost. I felt very much not understood. And that was really frustrating. But yet, no doctor, no expert was going to tell me to stop. And so I had to make that decision for myself. And I went so far as to ask my long-term disability agent, I don't know, claims examiner, what does it mean if I am recommended a drug by a doctor and I choose not to take it? And she said, that's your choice and it won't impact your claim. And that was it. That was it. I stopped. Um, I I had been going to vestibular therapy at the same time as I was continuing to. I had gone to a headache specialist, a neurologist, a stroke neurologist, a vestibular therapist, an ENT, and a neurootologist. Like this is what I was doing. It was exhausting and it was scary and it was frustrating. And it took way too long for somebody to say the sentence that I needed to hear. I needed somebody to tell me it's okay to live. It's okay to spend your life this way and live. I didn't know why nobody would tell me, So my husband and I got to the point where we were like starting to figure out the right questions to ask. And it was, what's next? Okay, so yeah, you can tell me to take Botox, but what's next? What happens if that doesn't work? Um, and there was not an answer. It was always like, we're going to try another drug. We're going to try. So if these drugs were not changing my symptoms for the better, eliminating them or making them a little bit better, what were all those drugs actually doing in my body? Because they're all powerful drugs that people take in order to get better. If I'm not getting better, then what is it actually doing to me? And I I had to make that decision for myself that it felt like I was driving up to a dead end, but what I learned in retrospect is that I was reaching the point of acceptance. without the help of doctors. I was not giving up on me. And I've met lots of vestibular patients that go to vestibular therapy for years, for a decade, or more. That's not me. It wasn't doing anything to decrease my symptoms. What it was doing for me was allowing me to not be afraid of my symptoms. For me to know that if I walk down the grocery aisle and I feel this war within me, between my eyeballs and my brain, um, and both sides are losing, honestly, uh, I'm not going to die. I can hold on to something. I can look at the end of the aisle and focus on the meat at the end of the aisle, and I can walk towards it and focus on that, and it might lessen my focus on all the things that were closing in on me and moving on each side of my head. Um, so I made the decision for myself. I chose to spend the limited energy that I had and still have, um, choose it, choose to use it on living instead of chasing. So I went from having this urgent, frantic, appointment heavy, always waiting for permission for somebody to say, okay, you can live now. Now, this is it, we're done. We've reached the end of your clinical journey. Now it's fine to live. Well, that was never going to happen, for various reasons. I believe part of me believes that the doctors are there to provide solutions and get their money. And that's my opinion of it. And they were always going to find a way to get paid and give me a new thing to try. So, in making the decision to go into living mode instead of chasing mode, I began to feel grounded. I began to feel like I owned my own life again. And I hadn't felt that way since my stroke. I began to feel like I could pace myself, that my life wasn't dependent on these appointments that I had to get to. And I could lead my day, or I could be led into my day through evaluating, like, what is my purpose again? Because I lost my job. I had to walk away from my job. What is my purpose? What is my identity now? What are my values? Like at the beginning of this podcast, if you go back to the first year, I actually sat down and thought through all of this stuff. Like, I know it's a lot. I have hundreds of episodes, but man, go back to the hard stuff when I'm crying and when I'm trying to figure out, like, do I still have the same values as I had before my stroke? What is life like now? I had to go through all of those exercises. And I am writing a book because I want to capture that, what I did. Like, what was the practical actions that allowed me to shift? What was the blueprint? How did I schedule my day? I had a whiteboard and I still have this big, gigantic life size, I don't know, mirror. It's like a floor mirror. It's gigantic. It's actually a mirror from a bathroom, and my husband framed it in this natural wood frame, and it's amazing. But I used it as my whiteboard, and I wrote out my day. What was I gonna do? Like with a erasable marker. Um, I wrote out my day. So on one side of the mirror, I had my day, and like, meaning I'm going to eat, and then I'm going to do my vestibular exercises, and then I'm going to walk my dog, and then I'm going to lay down, and then I'm going to, that's what I did. And then on the other side of the mirror, I had all of my doctor's appointments, because guess what? All those doctor's appointments, because of my memory and language problems, I couldn't remember a doctor's appointment. I couldn't put it in my phone because I couldn't reference a digital device in order to remember what was going on. I showed up at doctor's offices when I didn't have an appointment. I didn't show up when I was supposed to have an appointment. And I cried every single one of those times. I felt stupid. I felt like, why can't I schedule a simple appointment? Why can't I show up? Why can't I remember? It was hard. And I'm talking really fast because it just gets me so passionate about what that was like. So again, that person who asked me, and I don't typically say anyone's name on here unless you've been on the show. But that person who asked me, like, how do you know when enough is enough? How do you know if you've reached that point? Well, for me, it was like, are the appointments producing more stress than progress? Are they triggering my head more than they are helping me? Um, is every time I go to an appointment, are they saying, let's try something else? And I never have any meaningful change? Um, are they spending more time trying to help me manage my care than helping me live my life? And that actually was very much like they were telling me how I can manage getting in the car and going to the appointment. How can I not get triggered by getting in the car and going to the appointment? Um, how about I just not go to the appointment and then learn how to walk my dog without getting triggered, you know? Um, so there came many times over the course of those, I would say it was 2 years that I went through heavy a heavy calendar of medical appointments where I just felt like I was emotionally crashing. I went through a lot of struggling to feel hope, to the point that I actually ordered some stickers on Amazon, little stars, and every time I felt hope, I stuck a sticker on my mirror because that's how desperate I was. Um, I I decided after feeling all of these things that enough was enough for me, and I stopped. I just stopped. Did I feel like they were judging me? Probably. Probably I'd be lying if I didn't say like I wasn't worried about them judging me. Like specifically my vestibular therapist when I was like, I'm gonna take a break. I'm just gonna take a break from therapy. I asked her, is it okay if I take a break? Are you kidding me, Rachel? Why would you ask if it's okay to take a break? Of course it's okay to take a break. And she was very encouraging about boundaries. And she was very encouraging about She gave me this 1 to 10 scale of pain. And so everything I did, I needed to rate my pain. And what I ended up doing was, and I mentioned this last week in the conference, I created a health and joy journal, like a symptoms and joy journal. So for several weeks, I would write down every single thing I did throughout the day, everything by the minute. And I listed the activity, and then I had a column for where my pain was from 1 to 10 and where my joy was from 1 to 10. And that's where I came up with the spoon and cup theory, which is on my website. And I also have a podcast about the spoon and cup theory. So catch that if you have time. So I think what the heart of this message is that I am giving you permission to live, you know? Um, if you're asking, how do you know when it's time to make a change, to how do you know when you are going to have permission to live? How do you get permission to live? How do you give yourself permission to live? Um, you're there. That's my opinion. Whatever you choose at whatever point you choose it is the right choice for you. You are not failing treatment. Um, and you aren't necessarily graduating from treatment, but it is like it's it's my mind is blank. That's also what happens in this episode. Like, if you're wondering if it's okay, it's okay. When is it okay? Right now. Right now, it's okay. You're not giving up on never getting better because since I stopped going to my therapist, I still go to the doctor, by the way. I go to my regular appointments. I see my neurologist once a year, which I haven't reached a year to even say I go once a year, but that's the plan to go once a year to um, a neurologist. And since we moved, I just am acquiring, although it's been taking 6 months to get a new neurologist in my area. But I have a new primary care doctor and I see her. I've seen her a few times just to establish care, but now we're at once a month or once a year. And then I have a cardiologist that's once a year, and that's because I have a implanted heart monitor, um, just to see if we can get down to like, do I have AFib and is that why I had my stroke? That was just a little extra cherry on top so that I can see why I had the stroke to begin with. But that's a whole nother story. So we can honor our disability, our illness, without having it run our calendar. You know, it's time to get your life back. And whatever feels right for you is right. And just do it. What you need to know for disability insurance is that there are certain forms that need to be filled out, certain cadences that one needs to go to remain under a doctor's care. But, if you're not getting better, you're not changing, and there's no drug that is changing that. If your vestibular therapy is not working, it's okay to stop. That once again is my opinion. And even if you wanted to stop for a while and then go back because you find that it was working. For me, I have my own regimen. I because I have these dogs, I'm very active as I can be. And I walk my dog and I practice throwing the ball and kicking the ball. And these are these are ways to practice using my eyes in different ways. And I do my podcast, which is very helpful in my language and memory. And the brain fog, well, that just feels like it's going to be here forever. And I've learned to be friends with my brain fog. So that's what I have. I hope that this was helpful for you. It's always helpful for me to go back and reflect on what it was like because it's not like that anymore. And if I can share my experience and help that to look like strength and hope for other people, maybe you won't need to go get stickers, and put them on your mirror for hope. Maybe you'll just start feeling it. So, for those of you who are new, I record every week. I used to record every single day of my life, but I've begun to give myself grace. And for those of you who are longtime listeners and you were listening every day of your life, I sincerely just adore you and appreciate that you hit play and listen to me because that's what helps me continue to heal. And for me, this is a lifelong journey. This is a life of recovery, and it's become my full-time job. I don't get paid for it any other way than surfacing joy in my life, and that's probably the best payment I could ever have. So, thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time.